energy in this space. As we breathe together and suspend our disbelief, what will we envision here today? What will we remember or discover? Who will we become? The Greeks called this the theatron, or the seeing place, a place of visions where we enact and witness our stories together and surf the wave of our collective unconscious. We've been doing this since we've been on the planet, sharing our stories so we know who we are, where we've been, and where we're going. The theater, this empty space, is a space that I fill with stories. I'm a playwright, so I create characters who embody my angels and demons, and I throw them into the ring and let them wrestle it out. I write plays because I have questions, not because I have answers. I write plays to spark a dialogue. And I love that theater is a collaborative art form. A play doesn't actually exist on the page. It comes to life in the room when actors and a director and designers come together and inspire or breathe life into it. And then you, the audience, bring your energy that brings it to life. And this act of creating and inspiring stories together is healing. I really believe we need this medicine. The theater is my church, actually. I grew up in Bible Belt America, the daughter and granddaughter of Methodist ministers. My mother's side, actually, Papa, was a conservative, Bible-thumping, teetotaling pastor who loved to recite poetry at the dinner table. And on my father's side, my grandparents were evangelical, charismatic Christians in Texas who talked to God like he was a family member, believed in miracles and angels, and sometimes spoke in tongues. So my people, they were very compassionate, loving Christians with a pretty strict religious dogma. And church was my home growing up. Now my parents, on the other hand, Jim and Joe Wheeler, are remarkable people who have lived their entire lives in Oklahoma and managed to still be progressive liberals. A miracle in and of itself. My father is a philosopher theologian whose thinking has shaped my own. And my mother is a firebrand who encouraged my sister and brother and I to pursue our musical and theatrical talents. I played Ado Annie in Oklahoma and Louisa in the Fantastics in high school. And my parents have remained activists into their 70s. In fact, just a few years ago, my father came out of retirement and risked being defrocked and losing his pension to officiate my wedding with my beautiful wife, Kate. And this is the paradox of my childhood. I grew up gay in Bible Belt America. What a conundrum. To hear Jesus and the Gospels compelling us to be authentic and to love one another, all the while knowing that authentic Amy, gay Amy, would not be welcome in this place with the person that I love. So like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, I went looking for another home, for somewhere to belong. And I found that somewhere in the theater. As a freshman at the University of Kansas, I stripped off all my clothes on stage and sang, "This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, age of Aquarius," in hair, and went on to play a pregnant nun in Agnes of God, a Southern wife who shoots her husband in Crimes of the Heart, and Cordelia in Kabuki King Lear, among others. In New York, I continued acting, and this was in the heyday of David Mamet and others like him, who were writing submissive female characters who were victimized and objectified, and auditioning for those roles felt demeaning. I felt ambivalent about being cast, but not auditioning actually kind of felt like they'd won. So, to be honest, I was at the point where I was ready to leave the theater when I saw a workshop production of a new play at the Juilliard School that literally blew my mind every which way to Sunday. So the two central characters in this play are two gay men, Prior Walter, who's diagnosed with AIDS at the beginning of the play, and Lewis, his lover, who can't handle it and walks out on him. At the end of the play, in this completely over-the-top theatrical moment, an angel bursts through the ceilings of Prior's bedroom and says, "Greetings, prophet! The great work begins! The messenger has arrived!" And like that ceiling, my world cracked wide open because Tony Kushner had done something completely audacious in Angels in America. He had put religion and sexuality on stage together. boom, my worlds synchronized. I realized that I could, by being my authentic self, I could actually bring these two worlds that felt so disparate but central to me, I could bring them together by being a playwright. So I started writing plays. My first play, Intersections, takes place on a street corner in New York. It's an altercation between a lawyer and a homeless woman, two women. And when I wrote the play, people assumed that the homeless woman was a woman of color, which had not been my intention. So we did something very interesting with the production. We cast two actresses, one Caucasian, one African American. We had them perform the one act all the way through once, and then switch roles at intermission and perform it again. And people actually thought they'd seen two different plays and not a word had been changed. So we had chatbacks after each show about the complexities of race and class, and all of the proceeds of this production went to support women in shelters in New York City. And I'd found my calling, creating art that raises awareness and inspires action. This play went on to be turned into a film also with the same concept. My next play, Two Birds and a Stone, takes place in a war-torn, unnamed war-torn country, and in two worlds, the devastating world of war and the imaginary world of an orphan boy hiding in an abandoned barn. And during one night, a pregnant refugee escapes her interrogator and stumbles upon this barn where the boy helps her deliver her baby. As I was writing the play, I had the opportunity to spend time in Bosnia, in the cities of Sarajevo and Mostar, where I spent time with children, and I was amazed by their resilience and spirit. This was just 2 years after a ceasefire, but they would talk to me about how bombs had gone off outside their homes and then dive back to the river and swim and play. They would say that it was hard for them to sleep now that peace had come. They'd grown so used to the sound of tanks rumbling by their house at night or planes droning overhead. I write plays about things that keep me awake at night. Weeping Woman is a play that came to me in a workshop on mothers and myth. As I studied Medea from the Greeks and La Llorona from Latina culture, I became aware that this temblón, or shiver story, gets repeated across time and culture. A cautionary tale of a woman, an abused woman, who loses her lover and in her desperation takes her children's lives. In researching, I came across an article in the South Carolina Post-Courier that began like this. Linda Russell cannot reach into her daughter's mind to understand why she drove her little boys to the top of a boat ramp, released the emergency brake, and sent them to their deaths strapped in the back seat of her car. So she drives the roads that Susan Smith drove that October night in 1994, trying to fathom a depression so bottomless that it could lead to murder. And that became the action of my play. A grieving grandmother driving the back roads, a woman alone in a prison cell, and two furies who embody the prison guards and the spirits of the children. My mother once asked me why my plays are so dark. You can see why she'd be worried with this one in particular. And, you know, I believe that we have to try to understand why people do unfathomable things so that we can reach someone before they act. In my play Whizzer Pizzer, it's a dark comedy. The central character, Adrian, is a gay man struggling with his internalized homophobia who checks himself into a reparative therapy clinic to become straight, and it's called Getting Over the Rainbow. It's run by the Wicked Witch of the West, who I styled after talk show host Dr. Laura, who at the time had made the comment, homosexuals are biological errors. And I was outraged. So I wrote this play in which Jesus makes an appearance. He's doing an edgy stand-up routine. And as he's being kicked off stage, he turns to Adrian and gives him this advice. Love your neighbor as yourself. You hate yourself? Your neighbor is out of luck. Right now I'm working on a play about my family called Wake Me Up. My wife, our 15-year-old son, Jacob, and his other mom. The guy's got 3 moms. It's some karma he's working out or something. But Jacob is a funny, eccentric, sharp, charming guy who, as I speak, is in a Wisconsin mental institution because of periodic aggressive outbursts that put him and those who love him at risk. Jacob is high-functioning autistic, and there's currently no safe place for him. Not in an extraordinary school on Mercer Island where he spent a few years, not in Ireland where he spent some time with his other mom last year exploring options in the UK, And sadly, not in our progressive Whidbey Island community. Our son does not fit the system, but the system is broken. People with mental illness in this country at this time are shoved to the margins, away from their families, where they despair. I hope that by writing this play, I can provoke a dialogue. Can we find space in our communities for people like Jacob? Because Jacob does not just belong to his 3 moms. Jacob belongs to all of us. Are you picking up on common themes? I write about people who are broken, people who are struggling with their demons, people who are shoved to the margin and silenced. I write with hope and optimism. I wonder if us gays and freaks and geeks and intersexed and transgendered and male and female and black and white and every color under the sun, I wonder if we were welcomed to the table, would the conversation evolve? And would we learn, finally, that there is no us and them? There's only us. My cry out in this empty space is simple. Can we come together? Can we create the world that we want to live in? Anything is possible. First, we have to envision it. Thank you.